call the meeting to order with a roll call.
Governor,
Yes,
Attorney General,
Yes.
Commissioner,
Yes.
we're all here and invite, kick things off, invite everyone to join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up, North Dakota Housing Finance, public finance, not housing finance, public finance. Deanne must be online.
Yes, I am.
Oh,
the best.
man, you're making two of our days right here. You know how to work the majority.
We were guessing that it was gonna be a bison in a pumpkin suit, so a couple of us lost. I went along with Karen on that one.
Well, I disappointed last time, but because I wasn't ready for the SDSU game, but since we won, and it was such a good game, I had to have this up for this game, for this meeting. So here we are. And to kick it off, I have the Whopping City of Carpio and their $5.5 million request to replace their failing mechanical wastewater treatment plant and sanitary sewer improvements to go along with that. It is a 30-year loan request, and this project is eligible for $4,009,000 worth of loan forgiveness. So the net loan will be $1,527,000. They've requested a 30-year loan term. The 91 residential users that pay $28.56, and they will be looking at a $34.50 monthly rate increase. So that would be enough to make these average annual payments, which would be $64,269 a year. And they need this project. And based on that information, the advisory committee recommended approval of this loan.
So move.
Second.
So the population of Carpio is like 136 people.
Yes. 144 is the estimate as of recently.
Okay. And they're all signed up for more than doubling their, if I'm hearing the $36 is on top of their current, so they're more than doubling their rates.
Yes, they tried negotiating with a farmer to get some additional land so that they wouldn't have to do a mechanical, and they were unsuccessful. So they really have no choice. They have to meet the discharge regulations. So this is the only option to be able to meet those regulations.
And thanks to this revolving loan fund, it's possible. Yes,
Yeah.
they're all willing to team up and pay more. They can.
Yeah,
Okay,
without the
well,
loan forgiveness, it would be very unachievable for this community.
Well, it's one of the great things about this program. It makes the impossible possible, I guess. That's what we've got. So we'll, if there's no other questions, we'll call for the vote.
Governor, before I call the roll, I just want to mention that Dave's father is from Carpio.
Oh,
So, well, Dave, is that you don't get to vote, but that's an interesting thing. You still have a family there? Do you?
Not anymore.
And he born? Your father was born in Carpio?
He was born in Carpio, grew up in Carpio, moved to Minot and then to Bismarck.
And one question, perhaps you would be the one person that might know this trivia, but do you know how Carpio got its name?
I believe it was because the railroad came through and they had a post office in a rail car, Carpio.
I had heard that. I had heard that, and I wasn't going to say that until I verified that from someone else, but that's what I've heard too. So it's where it got its name. Great. Well, they're going to have clean water after this vote, or the beginning of that. Have a future for that. Future Carpio is assured. But that's very cool. We have a descendant of Carpio in the room. What are the chances of that? We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor,
Yes. Motion carries. Go car P period O period. Okay, back to you, Deanne.
Okay, and then the next item is just the memo with the loans that were $2 million or less that were approved by the advisory committee at their meeting. That list includes nothing but Arthur, Jamestown, and then there were 3 Dickinson loans. And if you'd like me to go through those, I certainly can, or if you have any questions on those, I can try to answer those as well.
I think it's been distributed ahead. I think people have had a chance to look through them, but while I don't get a vote, I do want to disclaim that I do not own any commercial or residential property in Arthur. So there's no self-interest here.
How did they come up with the name of that town?
It was at statehood, they discovered as you're applying for statehood, people haven't had to do that since 1960, but one of the requirements to become a state is to make sure you don't have any duplicate town names. And there was 2 Rose Valleys at that time proposed for North Dakota. And so then Arthur, in an effort to promote statehood, they were playing along, I guess, with those who were trying to achieve statehood, because Chester A. Arthur briefly in that period was the president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So they changed the name from Rose Valley to Arthur, but then of course he was tossed out before statehood was achieved. And they should have called the town either, Benjamin or Harrison, I guess,
Yeah.
after who ended up signing the papers, but it was named after Chester A. Arthur. Was
There you
the-
go. I knew we were gonna learn something.
Couple of things.
So presidential roots, the name of that town.
a
The
lot of
least,
double
the
dealing
least,
going
the
on.
least known and perhaps one of the most corrupt in history. But
Well, that wouldn't happen today if you're the most corrupt.
Yeah.
The
we
most known.
yeah. There's another tale that was named after King Arthur. An Excalibur stone was actually there.
Do you believe that?
What's that?
Doesn't sound like you believe that.
Yeah, no, I like that one too. Uh, Better marketing potential for King Arthur. Okay, and we were the Arthur Knights, I should say, kind of with that theme. We were
Makes sense.
Knights with a K, not an N.
I understand.
Uh,
You guys handed it to the squirrels all the time.
We did. We did until they became the fighting squirrels. They got rabies. They were very dangerous after that. They'll get bit by a rabid squirrel from Castleton.
Yeah, that's probably how his family pushed for that.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough to be the squirrels. They wanted to be the fighting squirrels.
Yeah.
He's combative.
Okay, well, that covers that, Deanne. We've got, that was the, unless people have questions about where the names Jamestown or Dickinson came from, we can move on to the next item.
I think that
How did
covers
Jamestown get its name? You're hanging out in Jamestown.
well, I'm gonna just go with the James River is gonna be my best guess on that one. And that would be all I have because I did not grow up here, so I do not know the history of Jamestown and I have not learned the history of Jamestown.
Okay, well, we've got an assignment for you before the next meeting. Because we want
I
to know who
guess
the
so.
James River was named after. We
Okay.
agree, it could be named after the James River. We got to find out who that was named after.
Okay, I'll get on that.
Okay, super, thank you.
Thank you.
But thank you for moving all these projects ahead so smoothly. Appreciate that. Thanks for dialing in and go Bison.
Thanks.
Okay, now we're going to have, you guys are finding seats at the table. Thank you for joining us. Brandon, Jennifer, Kayla, who's kicking it off here?
Sounds like it's me first.
Okay,
Yep,
all right.
with
We're
the fun one to
talking
kick it off. So,
foreclosures.
yeah, we have, we don't have a ton of foreclosures, but, they're a little bit rare, but even rarer is one that gets a little bit more interesting. And this one got a little bit interesting. We had a challenge of what we call a super lien. These were a hot topic a few years ago. If you remember, more often than not, they were in Nevada. You heard about these ones with the condo associations doing these super liens. If you're not familiar with it, it's a category lien under state statute. gives a higher priority than other liens. So if somebody has a mortgage recorded, you can file a super lien. It goes in front of that mortgage. So it has to be in state statute to allow it. In North Dakota, we don't have a state statute for it. These other states do. I think there's about 19 or 20 states that have a super lien statute. We do not. However, we had one that challenged one of ours. So it was a loan that was purchased in 2019. This one for our collection staff, this kind of had a little bit of everything that went along with it. So if you name it, goes with foreclosure. This had everything with it. Purchased in 2019. We started foreclosure in 2022 of January due to delinquency. Borrower actually filed bankruptcy in February. So we had to deal with that. So that kind of stops everything. But in March of that year, we got notice of a super lien from the HOA. So this property is in Williston. There's a subdivision just north of Williston, about 4 miles directly east of the airport, right off of Highway 85. The HOA was basically filing a super lien for delinquent fees. Normally, when there's a foreclosure, we reach out to the HOA. They send us a bill for any delinquent fees. For some reason, they would not give us a billing for this. Thinking maybe it was because they wanted to see what happened with the super lien. Interesting enough, a couple months later, we had another foreclosure in the same neighborhood. They did give us a billing to pay those. Not sure why. So the first hearing was in April of 2023 at the district court level. They did side in our favor, basically saying there is no state statute for it. The HOA did appeal. Interesting enough, the HOA is actually a LLC originated out of Nevada. It had something to do with it because they're familiar with those super liens. Again, district court ruled in our favor. There's no super lien status. They went strictly with state statute. They did then appeal it to the Supreme Court. Went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court heard it. They reaffirmed the lower court's decision. Again, there is no statute basically for it. And one of the justices even said, if they did allow this, what would that do for property owners in HOAs and then lending institutions? Would they lend on properties? Which we would agree. We would have to get something put into state statute to basically remove those super lien statuses, or it would be hard to lend on those properties going forward. Like I said, this one had a bankruptcy. This one also had another interesting twist that while it was vacant, the borrower actually vacated the property after she went delinquent. One of the toilets started leaking, and it was a duplex, so all the water leaked into the neighboring property, who then called us, and we had to figure out how to get the water turned off. The water is dealt with by the HOA, so it was fun because they deal with all the water, trying to get that turned off. And when they actually went out to turn it off, there was some other person's car parked over the meter in the street, so we couldn't actually get the water off, so the water just kept flowing. Needless to say, we had to replace flooring in the adjacent property as well as ours. And again, this had a little bit of everything there with it. But finally, it did come to resolution in May of this year with sheriff's sale. It was an FHA property, so we do transfer those back to HUD, and then we file a claim with it. So we're still dealing with HUD to see if we can recover. We're still doing a supplemental claim, which is about $40,000 left on it, and they'll probably maybe a quarter of that. So there was a lot of fees with inspections and things like that when it gets drug out into litigation, things like that. So
With the bottom line, reaffirm that super liens are not a thing in North
not a
Dakota.
thing in North Dakota. Yeah, I checked with our attorneys if they thought we needed to do any sort of legislation. They didn't believe so because there's nothing in state statute, and plus there's now case law that supports it. So.
And the person whose home was flooded by the neighboring plumbing issue is
They're okay. They have new flooring.
okay, and they're still in there.
They are still in there. Yes, everything's good. Yeah.
Good to know.
Can't
Okay.
make this stuff up.
No, and that was one of those things. When it happened a few years ago in Nevada, we were wondering when it would show up here because we were watching it pretty closely. So it took a few years, but it showed up. But
Any other questions on super liens? Thank you, Brandon. Okay, next up, Jennifer. Are we on the Laskowitz bond issue?
Yes, I'm just here to briefly report that the bond transaction that you had approved that did close. So just a reminder, the Laskowitz is the Laskowitz Riverfront property, which is a 4-9 twin deal that will exist with 110 units, 83 of them under the 4% deal and the remaining 27 under the 9% deal. So we issued 2 sets of bonds, technically 4 because they were divided into short-term and long-term. The 4% transaction was $15,500,000, broke up between a long-term and a short-term transaction closed on the 12th. And the other one, final numbers came out to a $6 million issuance, again, divided out between a short-term, long-term transaction, and that closed on August 12th. So construction has started, mainly in the form of dirt work and other preparations to get that building started. I know they're hoping to get further down the road before winter starts upon us, and they have to take a little bit of a pause or deal with winter conditions.
And in terms of the land component of this, this is being built on exactly where the
Yes, it's the
same land,
footprint
same
of the
footprint
high
of the
rise.
high rise?
Yep, yep. But 110 units rather than the 84, 87,
248,
248.
inverted 248.
That's right.
So anyway, on that, but on, with the, then what about if they would displace, we have less, we have 110 versus 248. Was there something that Fargo Housing did to provide or find housing for those people that got displaced from the tower?
Yeah, so there was a couple builds that came before that, which helped transition the remaining residents out of the high rise. So it was empty, of course. But Elliott Place is one of them. We financed a 4-9 twin deal with Elliott Place. And that one is where many of the residents went. Because it was public housing, they would have received some sort of a protection voucher as well to go somewhere else in the community if they so choose. So it is choice for them.
Okay.
That way.
And so, and this is just for the commission, just FYI, no votes required. Any other questions?
That's right.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jennifer. Moving on to your next item is the bond sale, Kayla.
Correct. Back in June, we priced 200 million of tax exempt mortgage revenue bonds. What we ended up with for a bond yield was 4.42. Our weighted average interest rate on that bond series was 5.8. The lowest rate that we were able to offer was 4.5. So for the past several months, we've been about 1 to 1.5% below our comparable secondary market interest rates. So that means that the pipeline has continued to bring in reservations, and our first-time home buyers have been active with our down payment assistance really helping. So overall, we're happy with the pricing. 4.42 is really kind of what we're looking at as we go to market here again in November. Rates had come down quite a bit, and now they're moving back up. So, if you follow the interest rates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at least from your intel, what's driving the rates back up?
Well, if I look at what the bond market is saying, it's a potential Republican sweep is what they're pricing in. So who's to say, though? There's a lot, you don't know what's going to happen, right? So, yeah, but basically they're prepping, getting the numbers where they think they should be for the election. It could all change. Right? So we'll likely.
But the tie back to the political outcome is that there's a different expectation about how the economy will be managed.
Yeah. Yep. There's 2 different outcomes, and right now, based on the bondholders, that's what they're pricing in. So, but if you follow polls, right, who knows? So, and do the bondholders know more than the polls? I don't know.
If they do, they should get in that business.
Yeah.
Future outcomes.
Right? So I do think this is typical. It happens during the election cycle, and we'll see what happens. So.
But one difference between the poll and the markets is the people in markets are actually making bets.
They are.
I mean, they may be wrong, but they're actually putting a financial stake. They're not just answering a question on a phone call.
Right.
Exactly.
So it's interesting, for sure. But meanwhile, how many first-time home buyers with the last bond issue were we able to accommodate? I mean, because the demand is greater than the supply here in terms of what we've got for.
Yep. It looks like, so based on the average loan amount, which was 224,000, we helped about 883 borrowers.
That's a lot of new home construction.
Yeah,
it is. And we think that we might be able to do that size bond issuance again. I mean, as you're looking here in November.
Yeah, we're actually looking, it'll be between 150 and probably 95 million. So not quite 200. We're kind of waiting to see interest rates with the bond market starting to go up a little bit. Our interest rates, we've started to have to tick up a bit. And so basically this last week, I'm kind of waiting to see where reservations fall. Average, we were doing about 12.5 million a week.
Mhm.
This week, I expect to be less.
Is it
So
because of that interest rate sensitivity?
Yeah.
You knock some people out of their affordability when the rate even
goes up.
ticks up a little bit.
Yeah, we were at, I would say a lot of people were getting 5 or below 5. So they're going to be at 5.5 to 6 probably now. Still a good rate, right? Lock it and run. But yeah. And then too, we're seeing a real slowdown when it comes to refinances because of the change in rate. So.
And on the refis were for people staying in their same location, but refining there.
Yep.
Because I've heard that there's part of the housing shortage we have when we were doing our housing roundtables is that there's people that don't qualify for first time can't go buy another home, so they're not leaving their existing one because of their lower mortgage, even if they might be an empty nester and they need, you know, a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom and they're living in a 3 or 4. So then young families that are growing, there's no market because there's no turnover, because people won't get rid of their current, they've been unwilling to get rid of their current mortgage during this time period. So there's a stagnation in terms of how people flow through the market. And then also keep hearing that we're shorted of senior housing that is on a single floor. That was another thing that came up a lot, which is there's just not much, you know, we don't build a lot of slab on grade or a thing where someone that's 65 and older that wants to downsize but wants to get on a one level thing that we're super short of that. And we're also a little short on the starter home end of things too. I mean, so we've got there's parts of our housing market that are active, but there's gaps that we have on both ends of the other people talk about the missing middle, but we're kind of missing the beginning and the end. You know, I mean, I don't know if they're talking about the middle pricing, but I mean, at the beginning of your housing thing and at towards the later end of it, we don't have the diversity of product. But is there anything do you have any, other than the rates, is there any program modifications that you guys would recommend to help us solve those housing issues or across the spectrum? Do you guys ever strategize about that?
I mean, we've had discussions on potential changes that we would make, and I guess I'd ask Brandon if he has any input. We haven't made any changes per se.
Yeah, I mean, at the affordability side, I mean, we could do changes to our down payment assistance. We do 3% down payment assistance. So, could we go up to 5? What would that help? Really the big is trying to figure out a way to spur more construction, right? Like you said, we just have a lack of inventory for those houses that are under 300,000, and they're just really the only thing we see for new construction is really Fargo. They're building to a lot of that lower price point. Probably 99% of the new construction we do is all from Fargo because they have those builders that just build to that lower price point.
And when you say lower price point, what's the?
I think the average in Fargo is probably 315, 320, which is still not cheap, but compared to Bismarck, where they say can't build anything under 400.
That's a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's most of our business is coming from Bismarck and Fargo, and that's like you said, we're just not getting the turnover of homes.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're seeing those little bit of older people that have a 2.5-3% rate, 4,000 square foot house, and that's just 2 of them. Well, they don't want to go buy another house at 8% when it's the same price, even though they don't need the square footage. So.
Yeah. Well, that's helpful to understand. Thanks for those insights. Next up, we've got consideration for approval on D.
Yep. So basically, back in December of 2023, we did an annual authorizing resolution for $450 million in long-term mortgage revenue bonds. What we're looking for here is to do a supplemental authorization for an additional $250 million in long-term mortgage revenue bonds. And really the need for this is due to the interest rates and HFAs kind of being the leader when it comes to affordability and first-time home buyers. The other thing would be timing of our cash flows and funding of loans. So if we weren't gonna run out of money here by the end of December, we would wait. Because a lot of times the bond investors like to invest in January, ideally. So, but we did the analysis, and when it comes to what we can get the bond at versus what I could use like a line of credit from B&D or FHLB on, it's cheaper to do the bonds. So,
And then we had authorized for 2024 earlier, but because of the ability to be 1 to 1.5 points below the market, demand has sucked up all the money.
correct.
You're not going to have enough to keep, first time home buyers going in Q4. So you won't do the 250 if you don't need to. You'll do up to, as you were talking about 90 to 150
Yeah.
potentially is what you're indicating, but you'll have the flexibility to gauge demand on reservations and
Yep. And
decide what you want to do. But you need an authorization from us to proceed.
correct.
So move.
And I would say too, just to correct, it'll be between 150 and 200 million is where we'll be. Yeah, at the end of the day, we wouldn't be able to keep the pipeline going. We actually already have about 60 million in reservations that's already for this new bond.
Against this one.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor,
Yes. So next up is the first cut at 2025.
Correct. So this is for our 2025 annual series resolution, and what we're looking for is approval for 750 million in long-term mortgage revenue bonds and then 100 million in short-term mortgage revenue bonds. And we increased that given our supplemental authorization from this year.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and second for the 2025 authorization. We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor.
Yes.
So I'm sending around the resolutions for your signatures right now.
Okay, we got one more to go on,
One more thing for me.
yes.
All right, so the final thing is back in September, we put out RFPs for our financial advisor and then for our bond counsel. For the financial advisor, we had 2 firms that submitted RFPs. That was CSG and then Kane Mitter. There were no local North Dakota firms that submitted a proposal for the financial advisor. Kane Mitter has actually been our financial advisor since 2003 and really continues to provide us with the expertise and bond information and oversight that's been valuable. So additionally, when it comes to Kane Mitter versus CSG, the fee structure proposed by Kane Mitter was the most economical. So we appreciate their counsel and hope to continue working with them. Then I would say, so for bond counsel, we had 1 firm that submitted a proposal. That was Kutak Rock. Kutak Rock has actually been our bond counsel since 2010, and really they're a leader in the overall bond counsel for HFAs. So they have a really good IRS tax law department that helps to assist us with our mortgage revenue bond issuance and then any rebate issues that might come up. So Kutak though continues basically be the expertise in loan agency programs and all of the things that we offer. So we like working with them.
So move.
Second.
A motion and second, which is for 8A and 8 to 2 attachments related to financial advisor and bond counsel. Any questions? Call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor.
Yes, motion carries. And Dave is at a national conference, I understand?
It's actually Fargo for another opening there.
Oh, another opening, okay, great. So that's cool. That's great. Well, tell them hi and thank you. A great update and report, and thanks for keeping the housing market going in North Dakota this year. Important work, appreciate it.
Peace. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Outdoor Heritage Fund.
How's everybody doing today?
Great. Tyler, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. I have Brian Amundsen with me too.
Okay, I will kick us off. So this is the project management financial report as of October this
Should
year.
you say that Reese is presenting at IOGCC this week, so he's out of town presenting. But thank you, Brenna, for stepping up, and Tyler, thanks for being here in person.
Yeah.
Perfect. So this is just a high-level dashboard view of the Industrial Commission managed funds. You can see where each of the funds are sitting and the total active projects, uncommitted and uncommitted dollars for each of those funds. So on this next slide, we'll focus on the Outdoor Heritage Fund balance. So we're showing a cash balance of just over $43.2 million. And of that cash balance, 38.5 million is committed, with the vast amount of those funds going to existing projects and a small amount to administration costs. The number you are probably really interested in today for what we have available for uncommitted dollars is just over 4.6 million, which exceeds the amount being requested today of just over 2.3 million.
Aaron, can you go
Go
back
one
one
more.
slide?
There you go. Thank you. And of course, your funding source is from oil and production taxes, and you get 15 million a biennium, which we've received just over 11 million in deposits from the Treasurer's Office to the Outdoor Heritage Fund thus far. Cumulatively, you've approved 239 projects across the program since its inception, and today 77 of those projects are currently active and ongoing. The cumulative value that has been brought to the state of North Dakota is just over $233 million. So those funds have been invested in Outdoor Heritage Fund projects thanks to your grants that you've approved to date. Here's a breakout of your Outdoor Heritage Fund funding by directive. And the only directive that we have an Industrial Commission goal is Directive D, the Recreation Directive. A goal was set that 15% of the OHF funding will go to Directive D, and today we are at 12%, so we are making progress towards that goal. And then here's a list of the grant applications that are before you today. There was a total of 10 applications brought to the Outdoor Heritage Fund Board, and 4 of those projects were approved and recommended to be brought to you for your approval. As previously stated, we have just over 4.6 million available in the fund currently, and the total of the 4 projects being brought to you today are just over 2.3 million. So we do have the funding available to approve all 4 projects if you so choose.
Okay.
Any questions before Tyler kicks off the projects?
Thank you, Brennan. I have one question: is where the do we know where this photo was taken of that herd on that thing that was?
Probably kind of in that southwest corner of the state. It was Mule Deer Foundation talking about where the herd of the antelope go.
Yeah.
It was part of their project for, I guess we can jump into that.
Yep.
25-1, it's a Mule Deer Foundation project, Western big game connectivity and habitat fragmentation. We have a lot of old fence out there in North Dakota. So this is going to remove 60 miles of fence and replace it with wildlife friendly fence.
You know those are antelope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
25-5. This North Dakota Petroleum Council planning for a future program. They're going to plant trees across different various projects in North Dakota. Received a 92 vote. We did take the funding down from the ask to 220,000. Essentially, they're talking about this is going to be a multi-year project, so this will fund them for a year, and they'll come back again next year.
It's petroleum.
Foundation.
And who directs them to where they're going to place these?
They have individuals come in there for grants.
Okay. Makes sense.
So advertising, word of mouth.
Yep.
I believe some of the soil districts work with them.
25-6, North Dakota Grazing Management Toolbox, Audubon, Great Plains. So essentially, this is going to improve grassland habitat on 7,500 acres. And the last one is North Dakota Natural Resources Trust, Working Grasslands Partnership 7, a cost share for landowners for the transition of CRP acres into grazing. We had 4 that we approved. Three of them had unanimous board consent, and the planning for the future was 9-2.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. I've got a question on the, I mean, I get the wildlife friendly fencing on that first one of the old deer, I mean, because of the entanglement and all the issues that can occur. But who decides where the 60 miles of fence goes in that one?
So they've used Game and Fish maps to essentially where the herds go.
Wildlife corridors. So their Mule Deer Foundation is working in
Working
conjunction
with-
with Game and Fish and working with the ranchers.
Yep.
And is some of that fencing on public land and even on state land, or is it, do you know who gets to qualify on that one on the?
The way it was explained, in a presentation, they had the corridors of significance, and I would assume, Governor, that those would go across school state lands, also federal lands, because wildlife don't discriminate between private, public, and whatever property. And their goal is that the unique project, because it's not complete fencing, that, so say, for example, you have a 2-mile stretch of fence, and there's a quarter mile of it, which is a significant area of traffic flow.
Yeah.
They'd go in and replace that quarter mile, and then the rest would be the traditional type of fencing.
And part of this is the lay down concept as opposed to replacing every inch
That's
of the
one,
fence.
it's one of their possibilities is lay down, and then they have some other smooth wire, so they, like antelope especially, tend to want to crawl underneath fences instead of jump. So put a bottom smooth wire, change their wire spacings with entanglement, so they don't have, if there would happen to be wildlife that would jump, the spacing is far enough apart that they don't get their legs wrapped up in it. We're able to free themselves is what their objective and goal was.
Like how you said that crawl. Most time I see them diving.
Physics behind it.
That's a great point.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for these four. Is there in the documentation, the ones that got turned down, can we have a brief discussion on that before we go forward on that?
Yeah, so we turned down 6 of these. 2 of them did receive the 6 votes, majority of the board, but majority of present, but not the majority of the board. So we have that odd rule where we need a majority of board members. So to pass a project, we need 7 votes. 2 of them received 6 votes,
How many people were at the meeting?
11. But because of that, we cannot fund them.
And so then what's the policy for bringing them back if they've
So one of
achieved the
these,
threshold when you haven't had a full attendance?
so one of these board, the Audubon Great Plains Trail meeting, they came back to this one. Same thing, they received 6 votes versus 7. So that's the second time that one was turned down. The other one, it's the first time they came to us this round. We previously funded it, but that one did not pass either. So essentially, we just tell them, hey, we come to the next grant round.
As someone who helps with appointments to this board, I mean, part of it, I mean, do we have an attendance problem or do we have a board design problem where, because we've been running into this thing for years with this even number of people on the board?
I mean, we did have 11, sorry to interrupt you, we did have 11 members present. I think we've been typically getting 11 members. A little bit of attendance problem, but, I think, in the legislature, I think one thing we would like to change, because this is in century code, to get this changed to majority present versus majority board members. And 2 more of these that passed with that. The other 4, one of them had 4 votes, one had 1 vote, another one had 4, another one had 1.
Yeah,
I
it's the
guess
6-6 or the 6-5 with
Yeah.
people missing is the kind of where we need to try to fine tune that. But I would be offline, we can follow up, because if it's a different person that's missing each time, that's different than if you have the same person missing, because then that could be an appointment issue and not a quorum, and not a structure issue.
Then we can talk about that.
Okay.
The one thing too, I don't get too shook about it. The fact that you have those types of votes, so, I mean, you barely got half of the board actually voting in favor of it. So there's some contentious issue behind it that they really need to address to
Yeah.
bring it forward.
Yeah, the 2 we turned down, one was, when you look at the they're passed, so it's I think that's the fourth time we've approved that project. This is number 5, was it? The tree planting, the soil conservation districts. One of the questions asked them was half of their projects were essentially like farmyards. So not really habitat tree planting. It's kind of like beautification projects. And some members had a hard time with that. And then we have some people that on the board that do not like trees. So compound that with, it was hard to get 7 votes there. The other one, very expensive planting project, a lot of like plugs for grass. That's the one that came there last time, came there this time, same result, 6-5.
Grass, not trees.
They were grass like plugs.
Yeah.
It's like a nature trail,
Yeah.
and there was years of maintenance.
They're expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're really expensive.
Okay, well, thank you for that additional detail. It's helpful. So we've got the motion for the 4 that passed 11, I guess, N1, 11-0.
Yep.
On your thing for 4 of those, with about $2.6 million across the 4 projects. Any other questions on those?
No.
Call for the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes. Motion carries. When's your next meeting?
To be determined yet, but probably May timeframe.
Yeah. after
But
session,
now we
for
have
the regular
another,
meeting,
yep.
After session for the regular meeting.
We invite Brian to bring up a measure
Yeah.
the board discuss.
I'll kind of explain this next item on the agenda, and Brian, if you want to chime in at the end, feel free.
Okay, that's fine, yeah.
So at the OHF Advisory Board meeting on the 24th, the board voted in favor of holding a special grant round of the Outdoor Heritage Fund program for the purpose of funding wildfire relief projects contingent on the following items: a receipt of a proposal which meets Outdoor Heritage Fund requirements, review and approval of the proposal at a special meeting of the Outdoor Heritage Fund Advisory Board. The special Outdoor Heritage Fund Advisory Board meeting will be scheduled in early 2025 after the North Dakota Treasurer's Office notifies the Office of the Industrial Commission that the remaining appropriation of approximately $4 million for the Outdoor Heritage Fund program has been deposited in the fund, and a needs assessment has been completed of the impacted areas, and the funding of those needs have not been met by other relief funds previously. So with the remaining funding currently available now that you voted to fund, after you voted to fund these 4 projects that were just brought in front of you today, and the approximate $4 million remaining appropriation for the Outdoor Heritage Fund this biennium, there will be approximately $6.2 million in the Outdoor Heritage Fund bucket. So we'd be looking at an approximate timeline of accepting applications through the month of January and holding the special Outdoor Heritage Fund meeting in February contingent on your approval today. The board previously voted on the creation of a subcommittee to vet through the potential projects prior to the special grant round, which consists of 3 voting members and 1 tech committee member. And those members would be Brian Amundsen, Randy Kreil, Rachel Rederath, and Rhonda Kelsch. And any remaining funds after that special grant round would still be available to other applicants for the Outdoor Heritage Fund Spring Grant Round, which would be held after the completion of legislative session.
So this would be a matter of really identifying the needs that exist out there, where some shortfalls may
Yeah,
exist, and then having a sponsor put something forward as to how to
The
implement.
precipice of it is that really the only uniqueness of it, or the difference is, it's an escalated timeline because the need of the infrastructure and the conservation things are an immediate need. So if we had to wait to the typical May timeframe, that's not going to get projects done or in the process of getting completed in 2025 when they're most needed. And the other thing is that it's a targeted area, focused area. Obviously, devastation is vast there. Needs some infrastructure, needs some support. The uniqueness about the Outdoor Heritage Fund is our focus is being on conservation, the landscape, soil, wind, erosion, those type of things that fit right into one of our directives. And I guess the thought is that we can kind of point everybody in the right direction. And we've got a lot of great grant people that come to us in the past for these grant rounds that have that level of expertise. They have the connections with the people on the ground. And after our needs assessments out there, a lot of the funding and disaster funding relief, in my familiarity with the livestock industry, focuses more on the livestock themselves, feeding and caring for those livestock, but the significant need of fencing infrastructure, water infrastructure on the prairies, rebuilding of shelter belts, tree belts, those type of things, a lot of times don't get addressed either federally, publicly, or just privately through insurance policies or those type of things. So I think from my perspective as being a cattle rancher and being involved, that's something that's going to be very significant for a lot of these operations to continue and for these communities to have the ability to prosper. So the thing about it is that there's nothing being changed. They still have to meet the same muster that we always put to everybody else. They have to meet the requirements of the directives. They go through the same process of approval from our board first, go through the due diligence there, to go on to you for the recommendation of approval. So it's just escalating the time frame and again, kind of targeting the monies. And if the monies aren't needed, they just roll right back over into the spring funding of the grant rounds.
So I heard this idea was coming and I've got some concerns. I think the key phrase that you used was that it has to meet the criteria. Mm-hmm. Because if it's not doing that, and this is just an emergency wildfire relief fund, then that's not the job Outdoor Heritage. I mean, Doug and I together, whether it's been, drought, fires, floods, whatever it is, there are an opportunity often led by the Ag Commissioner to go emergency commission, legislature, get special funds, all the stuff that over the years that you've done on whether it's hay or hay hauling or transportation replacement costs. I mean, very creative, very proactive. And there's always been support legislator to do that. I think that we have to be very careful here because of how Outdoor Heritage Fund was created, that we're not, constitutionally put this thing together and then to say, oh no, we're turning it into an emergency relief fund, and that the board, which is appointed, not elected, decided to do that. I mean, that could cause, so people could be really like, oh, what's going on with that thing? Because it's somebody else's job to do emergency relief. If we're just doing another grant round that meets all the criteria, and on top of that has the benefit of that. But even if we may have to be careful, if we have an open grant round, I don't think we do an open grant round and say you have to be in an area that was affected by wildfires to apply. I think that we'd have people protesting that, and they'd have lawyers, and they'd probably show up and say you can't do that. And this is designed, it's a statewide program to meet those different criteria. It's not targeted for emergency relief. And even if we gave it extra weighting because it was in that emergency relief thing, I think we might, get into some issues. I'd love to find out everything that you said about fencing. Everything you said is true. Fencing, shelter belts. The federal government does a horrible job of supporting ranchers. We have a problem with crops. We have crop insurance. We got every kind of federal program help it. Ranchers, not so much. I mean, so we know that. That's why the state steps up with state programs to help ranching, and the federal government is often the one that steps in on the crop side. But on this one, we should just take a good look at this to make sure that we're not getting astray of redirecting. Because I can tell you one other thing: if it is legal, and they say, "Wow, you guys got $6 million left over to do emergency relief," the next time, Heritage Fund will get appropriated $9 million instead of 15. They're like, "Okay, you guys couldn't figure out a way to find programs with the money we allocated you, and we have billions of dollars of requests coming in this budget for other stuff. Anybody that raises their hand and says we got extra money, it's going to be swept away." So we have to think about the long-term protection of the Outdoor Heritage Fund going ahead, because the way you protect a program is you do great projects that fit the criteria for what the thing was originally created. So I'm fully on board on doing emergency relief fund once we get through this fire season, which hopefully we're near the end of, and looking at those programs. And I know that's I know that I won't speak for the Ag Commissioner right here, but every time we've had a crisis, Doug Goring's been on the front leading edge of getting out and figuring out what do we have to do. So I love sort of the hearing from that group, the needs assessment, but the source of funds, I guess, is my concern, is that it shouldn't be on the shoulders of the Outdoor Heritage Fund. I mean, because I've been up there, I've seen the fires, I've flown over them. I mean, we could have way more than $6 million of requests coming in. How do we do that? We may need a larger program than that in terms of, because there was real devastation up there, way beyond livestock. I mean, and of course, tragically, we lost lives as well.
So we know, maybe this has been my question. I can't answer this with state FSA, but we know there's some assessments that are being done. And we know there'll probably be a shortfall. And especially like with ECP, I'm glad it's there, but part of the infrastructure needs to be repaired and replaced. Do you have a pretty good idea what you believe the request might be? Because the one thing, and I'll be a little creative in saying this, if they could come back, and this is going to be a challenge because in some of the, especially in McKenzie County where they don't do a lot of cell grazing for various and obvious reasons, coming back with a proposal that looks at enhancing grazing management practices would probably fall under Outdoor Heritage Fund. It's getting into the other side of it, I think, much to what the governor has said. We might have to find some other way of addressing those, and maybe we can do that through legislative session. That's why it'd be really good if you could come back, and even if you come back to me and say, hey, this looks like we're going to have a shortfall because ECP isn't going to cover this, ELAP isn't going to cover this. Maybe we can together go to the legislature and say, we have some issues here. We have some really devastating situations, and could we look for something to enhance or augment what else we need to do? That probably doesn't fall into Outdoor Heritage Fund, because the governor's right. Lawyers they'll be piled up and the public will go a little ballistic. But I wouldn't mind, I mean, if you think there's something here, we could just do another grant, because we do have to open it up for everybody.
So that
and then
was
see what comes in.
the true intent with this. And then, I mean, so I was the one that brought the motion. And I just did my rancher due diligence, called my people up in the area, what's the need? I have one great friend of mine right next to it, on the lower, under the major area of the river. He's like, yeah, there's a need here, but we're pretty good, but it's pretty bad north. So then call up north, talk to an individual I know up there, and he said, yeah, it's significant. And it's, so the reality with a lot of that assessment is that, first of all, they're going through some things that you just don't want to be intrusive. I mean, they're just trying to find their animals, see what we have, let's get them fed. That's what their mind is. Their mind isn't on, where am I going to put them next summer?
Yep.
So my thought behind this was not to flex, bend, change, or do anything with the Outdoor Heritage Fund, is to hold the whole integrity of that, the same process that we go through. We're simply not a fencing grant round, for lack of better terms. You will not pass muster. You will not get the needed votes if you just come in and say, well, I've got old fence, I need new fence. That's not what the design, from my interpretation of what the Outdoor Heritage Fund is. My perspective of this is that there's a lot of great work done by you individuals within the room in the past, currently ongoing, or anything else. It's not to supersede that, go over the top of that. It's just actually adding another bucket, that there's conservation practices there that are in place that are applicable to the Outdoor Heritage Fund, that in a timely fashion, we can make sure that that's available for producers to do if they want to enhance. The one benefit, sometimes it's hard to find the silver lining in such a thing as this, but when the slate is wiped clean, it also creates an opportunity to have, individuals that can provide input. They can provide resources as far as intelligence, as far as ways to put in better systems, better water systems. Sometimes in our ranching industry, we just don't change things because don't fix it if it's not broke. You might want water systems to do different things, but when they're gone, now is an opportune time to do that. So that was my precipice on kind of designing this, was not to change the mission or the intent of the Outdoor Heritage Fund. It was just to allow that to be accessible in a timely fashion, to make sure these producers have something else and another tool in the toolbox to make them feel like they can become whole as the best we can, because we all know there's nothing coming whole out of this deal if they're vastly devastated that way.
And I think I agree on the need identification. I agree that. part of why Outdoor Heritage Fund has been so well supported is the number Brenna shared at the beginning, which is, you got, millions of dollars. What have we done here now? 89 million of projects, but we've had $234 million of matching. So part of it is when we do emergency rounds, sometimes for people in need, we don't have a like 3 or 4 to 1 match that's going on. And if we don't want to set expectations with a producer that somehow we're going to show up and do 100% of a project. There's most of these, as you know, you're on the board, that these things come in with organizations that have fundraising capability to do that. So if there's a, typical sponsoring, conservation group that's also connected to this whole thing, that is doing that match, that's, if it really can be another grant round where we're not changing the rules, but when I hear you say the words, add another category, add special preference, I mean, those things are things that make me nervous that we're drifting away from the objective. And I think back about how supportive our legislature is. I don't like to make promises for the legislature. They granted $20 million to counties and townships for snow removal last year. Snow removal. I mean, it's like, hey, we could wait and it's going to melt, right? But $20 million because that's what had been, they were reimbursing people who'd expended that during those big snow events. In those largely rural areas, supporting producers across the state, we want to do it. I'm positive we come forward with a assessment after the wildfires, our season is done, and say we've had the worst wildfires in our history, and the federal government, didn't come here. Here's a relief proposal. I don't know who's going to vote against that. I mean, I don't know who would want to. Do you want to run for re-election? I voted against relief after the wildfire. So I love the intent. I'm just not sure this is the place where, and it could be more than 6 million could come from another source.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be the same process. So I mean, it's not ranchers directly coming to us as Outdoor Heritage Fund. It's someone else in the middle, whether it be a past grant round that they have the expertise that you just saw 4 of them. It could be any of them. It could be someone new. Someone else has to carry this. They have to meet the muster of the match. They have to meet the muster of their staff, their administration, their intellectual property that they're putting out there. They're the ones that, they're receiving the grant, they're allocating it out within the communities that have the need or whatever else. And so it goes through the same exact process. It's a different timeline.
I would say this maybe to wrap it up, which is we approve the recommendations you make, but the board, the industrial commission doesn't determine how often you meet or how often you do grant rounds. So this idea that there's nothing that says you got to wait till May. You guys want to have one in February when you got the incentive and say, we found a bunch of things that meet the criteria we've already established. They're in Century Code. We're doing all that, and we want to get this money out the door. I won't be governor then, but I'm guessing the governor will be supporting it, because part of the problem is I always feel this program's at risk because we get to the legislative session and we haven't used the money that they've appropriated. When I feel like there's got to be, when I drive around the state, we approved planting 340,000 trees. Why don't we approve planting 2 million? I mean, it's like, there's places all over. We got soil erosion going on. I mean, we know how to do soil conservation. We know how to do, every project you've approved, it's like, are there 2 or 3 other groups that want to do the same thing and get a 12-0 vote? I mean, where are they? I mean, it's like, I don't think that sometimes we not get enough people showing up and making the requests, because I know there's demand for these kinds of dollars, and it's dollars that are well spent when we get these, we triple the taxpayers or quadruple the taxpayer dollars for this program. This program is fantastic. So that would say, so I would say hold the grant round in February.
Okay, that's on me, because I was told differently that this is the process to change that process.
Oh, is there something I'm missing?
Governor, I believe if we hold a special grant round, I think we need you guys to vote to approve us to hold a special grant round. I could be mistaken, but I believe that's what Reese had mentioned, that
because you guys are somehow limited to the number of grant rounds.
For the 2 grant rounds per year. So if we want to hold a special grant round, then I believe you guys would have to give us the authority.
Can you just move the date of the second one to February instead of May?
We could do that.
What are the complications about having a special, just voting to do that? What are the?
Yeah, we could do that, but I mean, they've got the ability to hold a second grant round, and I don't think they're specified by month at all.
No, there's only one program that's actually specified by date currently, and OHF is not that program.
Yeah, I just like use up your second grant round and then
And if you guys are short towards the end of the year and you need to have another one.
Yeah.
Then come to us after you've ran the two and
Yeah.
then we'll do another one.
100% sense to me. I was told that
Yeah.
that's not the process you have to go through.
Yeah, and I would just say,
That's
when
the
you
reason
do,
I'm
when
here.
you do the grant round, just don't change anything so nobody gets riled up about, or I mean, I shouldn't say riled up, nobody actually legally protests the fact that somehow the
Questions
board
it.
has gone astray from what the original charter is or added additional criteria that's not in the law. That's our responsibility as we're the governing board then. It's not you guys. You're the advisory board. This board would be the one that would be like you, we're the ones that would be named in the suit of not following the law. So follow the law, hold the grant round and see if we can, and that separately, if we identify this emergency relief, we should be driving towards that because there should be a bill in front of the legislature that says we had the worst wildfires ever. What are we doing for emergency relief? And whether that's Stockman's Association, working with other producer groups, whatever, but my expectation is that would be happening. But some of that happens after the assessment. Even the presidential disaster declarations that the governor, we've applied for whenever we have these emergencies, we have to get an assessment of a dollar value to cross the federal threshold before I can make the request. And I know that's in process right now. We're still fighting fires, last week, but when we're done with the firefighting, then we start doing the dollar assessment to make sure we're above the thresholds and begin that emergency relief process. So I think there's multiple paths forward here. And we're in agreement about the need but we're also, let's protect this great program too. We want to do both of those things.
Couple of things I wanted to mention. Do you guys have criteria on shelter belts around farmsteads or?
We have criteria on it.
Yeah, in other words, I get if you have just 5 rows, you're probably not going to have much habitat. But I've seen some set up where they're 10 and 12 rows around an occupied place, and that's great habitat. And I'm not so sure if that should always be kicked out.
Yeah, there was a couple of members that don't like trees and some that struggled with that, where half their projects before were those farmyards. But I mean, when you hunt in the fall or in the wintertime, where all the deer, they're in the farmyards.
Where's the pheasants? They're in those.
Yep.
In those shelter belts, and it's protecting them. It's making sure you got something, a resource for the next following year.
I think the one important thing about that, and I know, I'll give you my perspective, but the reason that it failed is that they had, for a lot of the members, I believe, they had all their 2025 funds, with the exception of just under $100,000 they were short.
Oh,
And their
So
original
the
request was 5 million.
recommendation to come back the grant round later.
when there's.
So, I mean, just that was the precipice upon it was, from my perspective, or whatever else, is that, hey, let's just wait around, come back.
Understand.
And the original request was 5 million. We're like, we don't have
Yeah,
that. But I think the consensus of the 6 votes was around $1 million, $1.5 million for them.
the other thing I'd mention, Brian, is, if you guys get to a point, and let's say you have a grant round, but there's some way that some projects, some things wouldn't fit, come and talk to me, because there might be the ability for us to do a program, but it's gonna have to be very specific. There's gonna be a lot of oversight and accountability. We've done it before and we'll do it again. But this one here, after jumping through a lot of hoops, I didn't even want to pull the trigger or say anything because I knew we still had all those different programs out there. And until we exhaust them, we find out what the need is afterwards, then I'm willing to go forward and work with you guys. So that's just another. And to the governor's point, I know sometimes the legislature might say, well, you guys got money left over. You're not spending it. I get that, but you guys get to stand on one solid fact. You're judicious. You're reviewing these and money away to give money away. So I appreciate that you're putting a lot of thought into it. And most of those guys in the West Wing will support you for that. So you're doing a good job. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good stuff. And in addition to that, then B&D, who we'll be seeing later today, I know they're working with local banks to try to assess, you know, through their ag portfolio, if there are people that are stressed there, because that's another angle where we've been able to do stuff. And then our Department of Emergency Services has already begun discussions with legislators. So I'm not just being completely speculative, because legislators out west are all calling and saying, what can we do? People that they want to introduce legislation and do that. And then, of course, as I said, then we're also going through all the beginning of the assessment to be able to file for a presidential declaration request for emergency for the fires. So there's multiple prongs that are moving forward, but this could be another thing. But this is great about North Dakota is people want to jump in and figure out how they can help. So we appreciate that. But you guys have got an action item, which is,
Yeah, we'll discuss maybe
Discuss
just moving up the meeting to an earlier date.
Late February.
Yeah.
Mid-March is tough for me. I'm going on a 2-week fishing trip.
I would try to do it. I would do it before a crossover. I mean, my
Yeah.
recommendation, because then it'll be viewed as new information also into the legislative process, because, and by then maybe we'll have the go ahead of, hey, you guys we got a solution to the problem that is that. And then if it is, there's emergency funds coming, then you can just do another grant round and keep this money flowing and maybe protect some of it protect the $15 million appropriation. Okay. Well, thanks for coming in, everybody, and congrats on the four programs that are moving forward.
Thanks, guys.
Brian, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
What's next on the agenda here is Karen, I guess that's on you to
Yes, I am sitting for Claire.
do your best Claire impersonation.
Claire is in Greece, so he will not be joining us remotely. But he asked if I would bring this to you. It is a request to approve the ability for Claire to submit a comment letter to the Stutsman County zoning regarding the Stutsman County zoning ordinance, which would alter the setback of electric, gas, or liquid transmission infrastructure to a 2,600 foot setback from inhabited rural residences. So some key considerations on this. The Stutsman County Commission is going to receive written comments on proposed amendments. And those have to be postmarked by November 15th. The proposed amendment addresses setbacks for transmission lines that are more than 115 kilovolts and at least 1 mile long. And then gas liquid transmission lines that have an outside diameter of more than 4.5 inches. As I mentioned, the proposed setback is 2,600 feet from any inhabited rural residence. This is behind tab 11, by the way. The letter would go under Claire's signature as Executive Director of the Transmission Authority. And there are a number of different entities that are going to be submitting comments, but Claire's focus will be on the mechanics of locating, building, and maintaining transmission lines, so strictly focusing on transmission lines. And he will also include the impact on constructability, cost burdens to consumers, energy independence, grid reliability, and economic development. So those are the key focus points of his comment letter. Others that are expected to comment include Minn Kota Power, Great River Energy, Northern Plains Electric, Dakota Valley Electric Cooperative, Central Power Electric Cooperative, Minnesota Power Elite, Rainbow Energy, Jamestown Stutsman County Development Corporation, and Spiritwood Energy Park. And then the draft of Claire's comment letter is in your materials. So you had the chance to review that, but then it would also go to any member of your staff to review before the final draft would be submitted. So he is seeking your approval to submit that comment letter.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. I want to say I strongly support this, because it's 2,600 feet in each direction. So we're talking a 1 mile swath for a transmission line. And I guess I would augment, in addition to the letter, if he could send in the map of Stutsman County that I've seen that would show that you would not be able to, there it is, it's in the book. Yeah, you can't get across Stutsman County with that kind of setback. I mean, there's not a path where you could have a mile wide thing with no residences. And so this is this kind of zoning would basically stops. The stops are, huge swaths of what we would see as economic development if you're trying to stop these things. So anyway, the PSC's current setback is 500 feet. It's 1,000-foot wide corridor. The PSC holds developers to that limit. And so we've got state law that protects people relative to a current setback limit that's been working for a long time. And so anyway, I'm happy to have Claire send that letter.
We also do this on the industrial commission, 500-foot setbacks for injection wells, regular oil wells, any type of activity. I hate to move away from it and not support something that's already in place, because to that point, if we had to move that, we'd virtually shut down a lot of industry in North Dakota. And that would hurt the consumer, hurt our state, and we wouldn't be very progressive in that respect.
Well, we would be shutting down the activity that's the reason why we're able to lower taxes and have top-notch infrastructure, including like the water projects we've approved today, the road projects that go in, everything we're doing. I mean, all this stuff is based on us having a strong economy, and if we can't build infrastructure in the state, we're killing the golden goose if we do that. So, is there anybody else? Should Justin Kringstead also be sending a letter? Might be a question that I would have,
I'll take that.
depending on how that is, but I would maybe ask him to take a look at it too.
And Justin will be with us later today.
Okay. All right, so we've got a call for the vote?
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor,
Yes.
These out here, so I'll go grab them.
B&D up next.
yes, Brenda just went out to collect them. And Aaron, do we have Aaron online?
The late for the head of schedule. See you around. Coming.
Hello. How are you?
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Hello.
Hello. Another day in paradise.
Another day in paradise. How's it going, everyone?
Good.
All starting to show up a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm getting here.
The leaves changed, yeah. Well, I'm not gonna complain, because when you get things out in the field, always nice, beautiful weather.
When I said a lot of guys shouldn't have problems drying stuff down this year, so.
Yeah, sure. First, on propane. It's too dry.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Shrinkage just because it's so dry.
So you never know.
Didn't want White House.
I have his number.
Okay.
Fifteen.
Didn't we agree we're gonna start having stale Oreos in here instead of these things? Terrible.
Are we still waiting for Jared? Is that the,
We don't have an indication that he's on. this
okay,
point.
let's,
You
maybe
jump
we
to-
could convene
He was
the
on a
meeting and
little-
jump ahead and we'll come back to him if we get him.
He was on earlier, but yeah, he's not on now.
We can jump ahead to college save.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay,
Rob?
so you have for you the 2023 audit for the College Save Program. It is the bank's 529. The audit was a clean audit. There were no recommendations or communications that as a result of the audit. A couple little things I'll just cover just as far as some numbers related to like contributions. Year over year, contributions were up 96,000, up 0.21% over 2022. The interesting thing on the contribution side is, you look at the last 13 years, we've had a dip year over year 2 times, and that was in 2020. They were down 0.74% over 19. In 2022, they were down 15% over 2021. And so I think you can kind of start translate that, some of the inflationary impact on that. Withdrawals were $57.4 million, or about a 3.57% increase. We've been seeing that pick up kind of a little bit year over year. In 2021 was the high. Those were $10.3 million over the prior year, for a total of 55 million in withdrawals, or 23% over 2020. So we've been seeing strong impacts with the withdrawals, which goes to the point of saving ourselves, getting ourselves out of the student loan business. So overall, very clean audit, no issues, no recommendations.
Let's talk just a little bit about the strategy of this program, and then because we also have the match component on this, don't we?
In this, yeah.
New
baby match,
and then the kindergarten
match.
What are we spending on that, and what do we, it is a match. I mean, we put some dollars in, they put dollars in.
Yeah, so if you think about, we have the new baby match, kindergarten match, and BND match. If I recall, it starts around, Kirby, you can help me out here. Is it like around $100 or $300 for the new baby? Up to $500 for kindergarten match?
Correct.
And so, if you just think about the number of accounts through Q3 2024 compared to 23, we would have added 500 kindergarten match accounts. We would have added 800 new baby match accounts. So from a dollar perspective, you take 500 times 4, it's, what do you, I don't know, probably 25,000 a year in match.
So not big sums.
Not big sums, but when you spread that across and individually, is making a difference. We're seeing that in the withdrawals coming out of the program now. And then you couple that with, the bull run we've seen in the market over the last decade or so.
And they don't get the match until they put their dollars in
Right,
as well. So
yeah.
It gets them into contributing.
Yep.
That momentum going.
So I'm just looking at page 12 on the college saving here, but is this the right sort of big picture thing where people contributed at 45.6 but withdrew 57.3? And is that
Yeah.
And they start withdrawing, and because it's a federal program, so the withdrawals are controlled by.
No, the withdrawals are controlled by the holder of the account. So like I set one up for my daughter.
Mhm.
She's best example. So she gets the bill, I log into her account, I pay the bill directly to the school. And so right now, those are the only qualifying withdrawals. And I think you can pay for private school too, now K through 12. And so through the collegiate piece also, they're talking about having some legislation federally to allow some of those balances then to go with individual afterwards if they don't spend it all. But it's totally controlled by the account owner.
But if what you can withdraw it for is
Yeah.
specified in code, is what I'm
Exactly.
saying. It's got to be tuition, books, or
Yeah.
other.
Cost of living, I mean, it's pretty wide.
Yep.
From a standard of living standpoint.
How many are in 22? It was sort of similar. 21, we had about the same number of deposits, withdrawals. I mean, are we in a spot where either demographically we have more people withdrawing than we have depositing? Or is it more dollars per person, or what is this program going to be in decline in terms of total dollars under management, or where do we see this going as people are, again, maybe choosing other paths than college, or is there a demo? I mean,
Yeah, I would say, just through conversations that we have seen, the buildup of the accounts over time, and we've seen the demographic reach the age to where now they're utilizing these dollars.
more so than we're seeing the input, right? But the value of the count is specific to the individual holder. And so I still think we're going to see a growth in the program from number of accounts, but dollar value particularly is going to come down a little bit due to the fact that a lot of the early contributors are starting to withdraw those funds, as they've built them up.
But we're growing account holders.
Yes.
That's one thing that, I had the same question, but I saw we're growing account holders and we're getting good feedback on the value of the account on some of those account holders through some of our customer surveys, so.
And then on the, with the administrative fees that's shown here at about 3.5 million a year, who does that go to? Bank?
Yeah, so College Save gets 10 basis points off the value, and that goes then back in to help fund the match. So those dollars we put back into College Save, and that goes to offset administrative expenses and then goes to fund the match. So when you get a new baby, when you apply for your $300, that administrative fee goes towards paying that match. So we try to self-fund it through the.
Right, but this, on 600 million under assets and 3.5 seems like more than 10 basis points, or am I doing my math wrong on that? But and it's got to be more than the 25.
Well,
you talked
yeah,
about earlier.
well, it is, but I'm not entirely sure on if it's on total assets or if there's net, how Vanguard calculates that. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Is Vanguard, those fees going to them, going to us, or they?
It's a combination. So you pay you're going to pay a fee to the fund, and they're fairly low overall, probably less than 1% total. And so Vanguard takes their cut, and then it works their way down. We've got another middle, the software, the interface for the people to contributors out give their money towards, and then kind of we're that final piece of that 10 basis points.
That's about 53 basis points, that 3.5 million.
Yeah, but that gets divided up.
It's probably 3 ways or so, roundabouts.
But how much is coming to the bank?
10 basis points. And
then the rest, the difference between the 10 and the 53 is going to these other.
Money
players.
manager, the fund and so forth.
But we don't know what it's the 10 basis points on the net position that we're holding.
Well, we would know. It's just I would have to ask James, who he's the manager of the program.
Okay.
Yeah, he would know for sure.
Yeah. Because I'd be interested to know what our fee income is versus what we're putting back in terms of match. I mean, how do those two numbers go together?
Mm-hmm.
And don't have to wait to the next meeting. Just get back to me. I'm just curious about that. On the returns that are earned in this fund, get distributed back to the account. So
you choose your investment just like you would a 401k.
So depending on what they choose, they could have up years or down years in their.
Most
their
people
savings.
choose what you would call kind of a glide path or an age-based return because it's easy to manage, right? So you just put it in the age base and just let it run. But yeah, you're going to be subject to the volatility within that age base.
But they're managing for the age of the
Yes.
of the baby or the kindergartner potentially.
Yep.
On an 18 or 12-year cycle.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's helpful to understand that. But is this something that we're generally from a leadership team, are you guys like, we love this and we love having 600 million that we are a pass through that's sitting out at Vanguard, or how does this carried on the books from the balance sheet standpoint?
I like it from a strategic standpoint. I think it fits in with our financial literacy work, our outreach, our student loan work, and also our college save. I kind of look at those three as that strategic arm of the bank for that outreach, that education, providing for our North Dakota youth to attend higher education. Oh, by the way, we also offer you a nice, successful way to save and get a match. So I think it, from our standpoint, it plays well with our mission, and it seems to play well with the customers who interact with these products.
And it's a way to get a segment of the population, because we have way fewer people in this program than we have with student loans, right? But this is a way to avoid ever having a student loan because you actually save for college.
Right.
Exactly.
it's encouraging that type of early good financial literate behavior.
It'd be interesting, I mean, just from if we like it and we want to do it, I mean, it'd be interesting, like what's the population of this versus our student loan population? And kind of gauge our success. Are we
About 90,000 borrowers and total accounts are
6,000.
Being a new baby, kindergarten match about 20,000, so roughly
Yeah, the total accounts are up here,
Yeah,
47.
Yeah.
47,000.
yeah.
It's roughly half.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'd be interesting to say, like, I mean, if you're building a 10-year vision, are we gonna get to some spot where we got more people saving than borrowing and
Yeah,
more
exactly.
North Dakota families, and there is definitely a tie-in on financial literacy, and, I mean, all of those things, matter, but I mean, I think we ought to think about, I mean, and I know that there's some marketing of this, but, and it'd be interesting to sort of, I mean, maybe play around with a pilot and go, if our match was a little more aggressive, I mean, because if our 10 basis points is 600 grand and we're putting in a fraction of that on the matches, you know, maybe more aggressive on that. Do you get more deposits? I mean, I don't know. I'd put a little more,
Yeah, and
put a little more thinking about how does this fit into the longer term strategy? I guess that would be my only thing on
How to
this.
get it on a steeper trajectory, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where.
And
we're
the
looking at.
team, I will say, over the course of the last particular 12 months has done an extensive amount of work getting information and working with the tax department to be able to identify new baby, those sorts of things, working with the school districts and getting more involved with kindergarten, getting that information and data, and particularly state agency to state agency, trying to marry it up in a efficient manner. And they're really starting to pick up steam on that side of things.
One thing I would like to know is whether or not you've been restricted on being able to market to kindergartners. Because this is the first time, and we went for decades having fewer kindergartners than seniors in high school. I mean, that's how you end up with a declining student population, declining population. We have about, I think in this fall, we might have 800 or more people in kindergarten than we have seniors in high school. I mean, the demographic tree is flipping, and that's a good thing. But if you're told, like some other groups I've been told, they're like, we can't market. I mean, like the people that do the American Legion. I mean, well, why is nobody going to Boys State? Well, you can trace it back to when they were told that through privacy things, they couldn't market to juniors in high school anymore. The American Legion couldn't. So, I mean, this is something if my team is writing down stuff, I mean, this is a piece of red tape that ought to go away. But if the Bank of North Dakota can't notify parents about that we want to give them a matching grant for their kindergartner, that's
I'll reach out.
They're going to a North Dakota public school. I mean, I would find out. I mean,
I'll reach out to him though.
is there any red tape that's stopping us from doing that? Yep.
My observation, the staff and our financial literacy function, boy, they're out a lot at a lot of events, promoting education, setting up tables, doing seminars. It's been, I didn't realize there was that much going on in that space. So I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Okay. So anyway, clean audit there. Thank you for that. Thanks for a little strategic discussion. That's College Save. Any Jared on sighting?
Online.
He is? Okay, all right. Hi, Jared.
Good afternoon, Governor. Can you hear me?
Sure can. And we can
Okay.
see you.
Sorry about the delay here. Noticed you guys are ahead of schedule, so I'll try to keep it that
We
way.
are. Okay.
So I am here to present the results of the audit of the North Dakota Student Loan Trust for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024. My name is Jared Mack. I'm an audit partner with Eide Bailly and was the audit partner in this engagement. This will be a pretty quick presentation due to the nature of this fund or this program. If you turn to page 28 of the report that you have in your packet, that's probably going to be the best area that summarizes the details of this audit. This is the report that goes to Lafferty. And the highlights of this audit are: we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements of the Student Loan Trust, which is the cleanest opinion that a public accounting firm can provide over a set of financial statements. There were no findings or recommendations, no internal control deficiencies that were determined to be a material weakness or significant deficiency, no non-compliance that was material that was identified. There were no findings in the prior audit either that needed correction, no adjustments or past adjustments to the financial statements. So arguably about as clean of an audit as you can get. Worked with the bank on that this summer, and yeah, it was pretty straightforward, pretty cut and dry. So that's really all I have to present on the audit itself. Would welcome any questions that anyone may have.
Any questions?
Sounds good.
My only question is for the bank, not for Jared, but this thing got started in 1979, and we see it once a year for about a minute like this. Is there still, tell me the strategic reason this thing is still there and it's got such small numbers?
The strategic reason it was set up back in that time frame to produce basically liquidity for the bank, and you could sell student loans into the trust, put the liquidity back in bank. And so over that course of time, we evaluated if there's liquidity needs for the bank. We could group student loans, we could sell them into the student loan trust and then get liquidity from that purpose. So we had a few loans, I think, is it $1 million or whatever that is sitting out there right now. Those will be paid off probably come 29 or 30. So we're going to have to evaluate kind of where the student loan trust is at and what the future of it holds. But right now it's really be just a liquidity source for the bank if we need it.
It's just, the strategic question is, we've got the tool built. Do you tear it down, or do you keep it built and bear some cost to keep it out there in case you need it?
Yep.
You know?
Okay. Well, that answers my question of why it exists at all and why it's so small, because this is just a keep it alive as a mechanism.
Yeah, it is. It's set up legislatively, so we'd have to just look at, the challenges of resetting it up or tearing it down or something.
Yeah, well, our position is very different than 79
Right.
when it was created. So that's but it's good to know that there's another little tool in the toolkit.
Yeah, and it doesn't appear to be too terribly expensive to keep it out there as a tool, so.
Right. And we could pick which loans went into it if we needed to do that. So you could cherry pick a high quality pool, or at least presumed to be higher quality.
Yeah, you could form a pool and then go out. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. That answers my question. Thank you. Jared, any other questions for Jared from the commissioners? Nope. Hearing none. Okay. Thanks, Jared.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Third quarter. Don?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Tab 14.
go through and then I'll jump in wherever needed. So.
Okay, yeah, we'll start page 1, balance sheet, just a quick overview. September's assets came in at about 10.7 billion. Loan portfolio was approximately almost 6.1 billion. Commercial loans were lower than budget by about 93 million. This was just really the timing of some state institution loans. And then we had some good activity as it related to commercial participation in our flex-based program particularly. And then our ag loans were higher than budget by about 53,000. Continued pretty good volume in farm and ranch. Moving to page 2, income statement. Year to date, we're at 151.9 million, about 6.8 below budget. Higher interest income to date, just related to higher rates on our securities as we reinvest along the yield curve, and then higher balances and rates in commercial participation, farm and ranch, and budget. Then our interest expense is higher than budget by about 27 million, and that's just due to liquidity tightness, particularly in the first half of the year. Next, I would just draw your attention to page 5. I want to point out just a couple things on the right-hand side. Listening to feedback on the report and trying to kind of modify this to give us a little bit more of what you're looking for. On the chart to the right, you can see we added the 12 largest North Dakota banks. 2 new categories are on the bottom. We look at the net interest margin of Bank of North Dakota relative to the 12 largest North Dakota banks. You can see that's within about 32 basis points. And then the overall average cost of funds, that's just on our captive at 205. The 12 largest North Dakota banks have a cost of funds of 259. And then we also pulled off the efficiency ratio as we've had conversations of that's not really a true apples to apples view. So we pulled that off this chart. And then finally, the third bullet on the right-hand side just gives kind of a desktop view of if the bank were a apples to apples approach from a commercially financial institution. And that's adjusting our cost of funds and our efficiency ratios. And adjusting that would impact our return on assets by about a negative 71 basis points, or about $71 million impact to the bottom line.
Say the last sentence again on the.
So the impact.
Which page were you on?
Sorry, page 5.
Okay.
On the bottom right, last
I
page.
think we were all on page 4, I think. So.
Okay. Yeah, so the bottom of page 5, right-hand side, last bullet, that is a high-level desktop kind of apples to apples. If you think about adjusting our cost of funds along with our efficiency ratio to a more market-based approach, it would impact our return on assets by about negative 71 basis points, or about a $71 million impact to the bottom line on about $10 billion of assets. So gives a little bit of a view of kind of an apples to apples look, kind of commercially viable.
Very basic, very back of the napkin, you know, to adjust efficiency up to the standard and then adjust cost of funds up, you know, right to mid-market. So it's making a couple huge assumptions, but it's something.
Yep. Well, appreciate that, because I mean, I think this is a part of the way we get better is take a clear look at where we stand.
Absolutely.
Without the advantages of no marketing department and low cost of legally required deposits.
I'll take on to page 6 then. This is our loan originations for the quarter end. And you can see we had total origination of 1.6 billion compares to last year about 1.8. So we are down a bit compared to last year. But if you remember, last year was the run up. Of course, interest rates were on the rise. Everybody was trying to lock in, lots of construction activity, just a lot of loan activity. So throughput last year was incredible. And you can see we're basically on pace with last year. So having another really good year. So we're down about 221 million compared to last year. I point you though to state institution loans. You can see the variance there. We're down 450 million, and it's only 6 loans different, right? So if you take that piece out, we'd actually be up 230 million, even compared to last year. So again, it's only some really large state institution loans. I can't go into the details there because we're not in confidential, but I think it points to the fact that we're having another really robust year when it comes to loan originations. So commercial loans up, they're at 1.4 billion compared to last year, 1.6. Again, the big variance is state institution. Bank participations are actually up 28 million. Bank stock up 83 million on the year. Livestock, agriculture loans, including livestock, are all doing pretty well. You can see we're at 188 million last year, 158 million. Last year, 188 million this year. So we're up about 37 million this year, just in agriculture. Most of that is in the farm and ranch category. And you can see in the farm disaster programs, we did have that variance, 16 million going the other way. And that was our livestock rebuilder program we had in place last year. Student loans continue to see a gradual decline in activity there, not only in the originations, but we're also seeing that on the overall balance of the student loan portfolio. Down on the bottom is our legislatively directed programs, and you can see here our activity has fallen off quite significantly. We're down 135 million on the year. Most categories are down. Only one that's up is the Legacy Investment Technology Loan Fund. I think next to page 7, this is our ending balances of our loan portfolio, each of our primary 4 portfolios. And you can see the blue is continuing to go up. That's our commercial portfolio of almost $4 billion now in commercial loans. We're up 325 million on the year. Year over year, if you actually look back at this report a year ago, we're up 607 million in commercial loans alone. So very strong growth in the commercial portfolio. Ag, on the other hand, you can see it was kind of plateaued back in 21, 22. started to see a bit of an uptick in 23, and now so far in 24, we're seeing a pretty nice increase. So we're up to 774 million, up 39 million so far this year, just on the portfolio alone. And then
one thing on ag, we are seeing more ag, a number of ag producers that we're financing. So the number's increasing, but they're smaller deals. Of course, you can fill up on pretty big multi-million-dollar real estate projects and grow that blue bucket pretty good, but it takes a lot of ag deals at $1.5 million a pop to really grow that number. But we are seeing a number increase.
On the ag stuff, are we, do we break out, because we have some of these programs, Beginning Farmer and others, where we're doing direct, and those are loans that the local banks wouldn't do, and then other ones where they're showing up in our ag portfolio, but we're participating local. I mean, one of the things that I know that Doug understands is we've had we've had consolidation for 100 years, right? I mean, well, since the 1930s, there's been consolidation, but every time a farmer retires, it's often today not their kid that's starting over. It's the neighbor buys them out, and the bigger getting bigger. And I imagine that we're getting some of these really big. I mean, we're probably we got some ag operations that we're loaning money to because the local bank is over the top of their credit limit, potentially. And it would just be interesting to see that rise, because I mean, I think we're moving from a scale standpoint towards fewer, larger. And that's a different dynamic, for communities, for people that provide inputs, for all the other activity that goes on in a community. I mean, it's a very, very different thing when we get that. So it's like, I don't know if there's a way that we can read that, or if we're, programmatically, if there's something that we're trying to support. I don't know if Doug's got any ideas on that. I mean, the farm programs federally probably are also incentivizing scale too. And
to a degree, I would say probably the bank is going to be one of the first places. Any of those lending institutions are going to be one of the first places that are going to give you a good snapshot of what's happening out in the countryside. Because by the time the census is done on agriculture, they're always behind. And it was pretty telling in the last census how much we'd already dropped, but we'd already known that within the bank. We'd already seen changes going on. This is probably going to be one of these places where we have a better pulse on what's happening in the ag community, just what's happening at the lending institutions, whether they're going to their lead bank or working through some of our programs. One thing that is always going to be challenging, your point, what do we do about beginning farmer loans?
Mm-hmm.
You can offer a lot of money, but they still have to pay it back. And at this point, you could give them the land free and they still couldn't pay for it. Right. Because it's just so expensive. It's not tied back to any real number anymore. Mm-hmm. They have to be subsidized by the rest of the farm and the rest of the family. I don't know how to fix it. I know I get an earful at least once a week, sometimes 10 times. Mm-hmm. What are you doing to fix this? Still a free market. It's still the United States of America. Mm-hmm. So
they've overflowed to my office when they're asking me about farm prices. It's not probably that good, but
can we send someone to jail? The price of wheat is.
Maybe don't necessarily want to go to jail, but they definitely want a lot of people foreclosed from getting on land. And
yeah,
I mean, I understand.
To that end, strategically for the bank, I met with the team and had them start a review of all of our ag programs, and just a review to look at them and see, a lot of them were developed quite some time ago. I think it's been a while since we reviewed them. So we're going through a review process to see, are they delivering the mission that we need them to deliver given the current status that we're in. I have no idea what solutions will come about of that, but we're looking under the hood on it. So
I think that, one place is part of that. I'm really happy to hear you're doing that review, but one place to think about is where Doug was talking about on the beginning farmer, because that program was designed to help us have beginning farmers succeed. And if our beginning farmers if that's not working, we make them, give them a loan, but the price of land is so high, they could never, they can't scale their operation. They can't buy the next quarter section that comes up. They can't do anything if they're stuck in this beginning farmer mode and can never get to profitability. And it'd be interesting to know, I mean, are the group of people in our beginning farmer group all at such a competitive disadvantage that loan pool isn't going to achieve the goal? Because the goal wasn't to have beginning farmers. The farm was to grow a younger generation. I mean, that was part of it, because you've got, the average age of farmer going up and up. We got to help her. I mean, that was the sort of the intent, but is it working? And maybe you just have to actually survey to get a better, broader sense of if we're actually achieving the goal that we wanted. And if we've got some insurmountable market things, because we might be tricking ourselves into thinking like, oh, we've got, or maybe we've got, a dozen or, 50 new beginning farmer loans, but, we need 1,000 new beginning farmers.
I think
it's like, what's the scale? Are we not getting the reach, or, I'm not sure of the.
I think to your point, Doug, I think it's a multi-pronged problem.
Yeah.
And I think that program needs kind of evolved in light of how can it answer. I don't think it's just the lending. I think there's also you got the family dynamics, you got the succession planning, the estate planning, which that industry is pretty far behind on. So I think I think we can get creative and maybe look at that program and add in some more multi-pronged solutions that might attack it from several kind of angles at once and maybe be a little more successful. So
That's a good idea.
Yeah, because some of those other multi-factors could be tied into the program.
Right.
Somehow to kind of incent the behaviors that increase success.
Do an estate plan and you get this, attend this, you get that. And I'm just spitballing here.
Right.
We need to look at them and kind of bring them up to the current centuries, or the current decades.
I do have a thought that if, when you're ready, let's talk offline, because there is something else that we could use as a tool, but it ties the bank in directly. And that's to do with contract for deeds. The problem is when you do a contract for deed, if they default, you have to go collect, and most people don't want to do that. If you can tie that back into the bank, you guys can be the bad guys. They can still recover the land. They just have to take care of the default. But that's something we probably need to talk about offline, because you need to tell me all the pitfalls too.
Well, I like the creative thinking. I think that's what we got to do is think creatively in this space. So
Yeah, we have that expertise within the bank. I've got that on my team, so it's a great idea. Now, speaking of farming, we anticipate we're going to have more renewals, more activity, more participations this year with the ag renewal season. Part of that's due to liquidity, not as much with our lead banks as they've had in the last several years. And then also risk deflection. We think, obviously, with commodity prices where they're at, we're going to be seeing much tougher renewal season this year. And because of that, we historically have seen a larger share of participations.
now this is coming off of 2 or 3 years where guys were drawing on their operating lines. They were so cash flush. So it maybe goes back to a more normal borrowing level, I think, is what our expectation is.
And then on the student loan thing, I guess I'm always happy if I'm seeing the loan portfolio go down.
We are too.
Instead of up, but I mean, because again, I mean, you saw it last week where there was, Biden administration's trying to, 2 weeks before an election, trying to give away, billions of dollars of taxpayer money to 8 million loan holders. Which right before an election, it may not go through. Supreme Court might knock it down, but they make the announcement like, hey, it's basically
buying votes.
Exactly. I mean, it's just disgusting to me that and then nobody says anything. I mean,
we discussed the overall strategy of student loans in light of the environment, because we're facing that even in the judicial level in the areas that we offer student loans, where some of this forgiveness is starting to penetrate through some of the judges' thinking and rulings that have surprised us, quite frankly. So we backed off of doing the out-of-state, because there was a lot of risk there. The loss curve was high, but we felt strategically doing the in-state still made sense from a mission standpoint, even given the environment, even though we're watching the environment. And if it gets closer to you know, if the risk profile of that environment increases to an extent, we'll have to back off of this. But at this point, we're still saying, hey, it's worthy of the mission to continue to help North Dakota youth get their higher education needs met, but we're backing off of the out of state. But we're watching the environment because it's a real factor.
Yeah, because, and I think part of it is, you see the word student loan or student loan forgiveness, that all sounds like positive, but the loan doesn't go to the student. The loan is essentially a pass-through grant to an institution. And if we're helping out-of-state institutions with loans, you know, we're just supporting their ever-increasing high tuition. And so another thing to think about is if you're trying to scale this thing back, which is, you know, yeah, well, I mean, should we help our own institutions? I mean, student loans for people going to North Dakota institutions, at least we're funneling the money to a place we're already getting money to, as opposed to funneling it out of state.
And we are doing that. So
Yeah.
even if they're out of state, but coming to school, going to school in a North Dakota institution,
Yeah.
we do finance those.
But I think I would take a look at how much of that money is going to, because these places that just keep raising their tuition, you know, 8 to 12% a year, and then they keep getting a bigger loan, and we do it, and then hoping that someone's, I mean, that $1.5 trillion of student loans at the federal level, that's $1.5 trillion of subsidy that went to higher ed. And and I won't get into you can fill in the blank on higher ed and you know, and why 95% of people of most of those institutions are voting for the people that are forgiving the loans. I mean, there's just an economic cycle that's going there that doesn't have really a thing that's the education part got lost in the whole piece of that.
So on the politics that I'm going to be in trouble for suing twice successfully to block that plan by the Biden administration.
No, you're going to be a hero.
I'm going to be a hero around this table. You know, that's what I mean. They do keep going. I think it is their third or fourth iteration of this. We joined a couple of suits that they've been successful. I don't think they're that complicated, and yet they've
been successful blocking them.
Blocking so far, and then they just keep coming up with a new plan.
Well, they want the headline. We're doing it.
You're cynical. No, it is bad. It's a cynical, the whole thing is. So I say it's not that complicated to block it, but they keep coming up with more plans. They like the headline you're in. Keep doing it.
Okay. Well, thanks for keeping an eye on it.
Yeah,
And I mean, and again, we just have to be strategic to make sure that our money's going. I mean, if the mission is about helping North Dakota, and we can talk ourselves into we're helping these students go to out of state, but maybe we should think about that.
Sure.
Too.
We'll keep an eye on it. Absolutely.
So just to wrap up page 7, so we can see the student loan portfolio has continued to pay down. We peaked out at about 1.2 billion, and now we're just over $1 billion, and we anticipate in 2025 it's going to drop below the $1 billion mark. So you can see residential continues to pay down as well, and that's down to 294 million. Take it back to page 14, and if you have any questions on the other pages, let us know. The credit quality, our allowance, 116 million on our portfolio of over 6 billion, so about 1.92%. That has gradually trickled down. We've been at around the 2% range for quite some time. We're at 1.92. It's all due to loan growth, and we haven't seen deterioration on any major scale in the portfolio. So we haven't needed to have a lot more provision. And as the portfolio has grown, it's dropped our allowance percentage down just a bit to the 1.92. We did have a true-up provision on our CECL model, and we actually reversed provision this quarter of about almost $1 million. If you look at the bottom left table, you can see our allowance 192, our North Dakota average 121. Second bullet off to the bottom right is showing as a percent of all non-guaranteed loans, we're at 245. So basically, we have double the reserve compared to the average North Dakota bank. We're very well reserved. Over on the right-hand chart, you can see our non-accruals, non-performing loans, and adversely classified. So we'll start with the orange line, the adversely classified. You can see we did have an uptick as we went.
You're still on 14?
Still on page 14, yep. On the upper right-hand chart. So our adversely classified is the orange line, and that got up to 166. And of course, we saw a decrease last quarter in quarter 2. And then now we've seen an uptick again, all due to one relationship, which I think we've had discussions on who that is. But nearly all of that increase back up to the 1.7% range is due to one relationship. On the non-accruals, non-performing loans, that's down nicely. You can see pretty much on flat compared to last quarter, but down nicely from where we were at the beginning of the year. So non-performing loans, we're at 0.45. North Dakota average is at 0.88. So we're at about half of the level of non-performing loans of the North Dakota average. And if you go to our delinquencies on page 15, pretty good story to show here, especially considering the last year with this, high inflation environment, the impacts that the lag effect of the economy, and that usually trickles into within, 6 to 18 months, trickles into our consumer portfolio especially, and we have not seen that. You can see our total portfolio, we're almost right on pace with where we were last year, and our student loan portfolio, the one we were most concerned about, is exactly at the same 3.67%, same as it was last year. Residential's up just a tick. Farm loans, basically the same as last year. Commercial, just up a tick a bit compared to last year as well.
Did the student loan number, did it change much back to this program when they first, the first attempts by the Biden administration, when they started signaling they were going to forgive that, some of that debt? Did that impact it?
No, it really didn't.
It didn't.
No.
It didn't change people's.
We
They
had
feel like suckers for paying it.
Well, if we had a national portfolio, I don't know this, but my guess would be I saw some more flash, but
in our portfolio, we haven't. National
So I guess
delinquencies
they're paying attention to
on
it.
the federal loans, they're going up. They're getting they're around 9%. Yeah. And we're sitting at 3.6. So
Triple what we are.
Yeah.
one thing.
I mean,
that-
it's rational.
Yeah.
It absolutely is rational. You're like, they're going to figure this out at some point.
Yeah.
Drew Wrigley's not stopping us. It's Claire, actually. I didn't. It's Claire.
So on
Yeah.
the right-hand chart is our over 90 days, and year over year, we're nearly cut in half. We're down to 0.6%. We're at 1.06 a year ago. So over 90 days has also improved. And quarter over quarter, I know you can't see that here, but just to give you some comparison to where we were 3 months ago, we're basically flat on delinquencies over 90 days. Bottom left-hand table, we're at about 15 million in student loans over 90 days, and that has ranged in that 15 to 16 million range for 9 consecutive quarters now. So feeling pretty good about that. Just some other leading indicators that I track are our student loan forbearances, and those numbers are continuing to trend down and have every quarter since the pandemic. So that is something we really watch. We also watch our student loan default claims. First, we have disability. We also have death claims. Those are a little bit outside of our control. Default claims, there's a lot we can do there, and we are. And we've really held our student loan default claims in check. We've been trending lower on student loan default claims for the last year now. That would be my comments on credit quality. Any questions on those?
I would just point out on the next page, there's a good dashboard on the College Safe program. Thank you. I think that's it for performance highlights. If there's any questions. Next section, we do need approval on, and essentially there are a host of resolutions with me coming in, taking over the CEO title. We just have to update with a lot of our correspondent partners, the Federal Home Loan Bank, so we can conduct business, borrowing resolutions and whatnot. I won't go into much more detail other than we kind of need these to conduct business.
So moved.
Do we know, is Doug coming back?
I think he is.
Okay.
Not to be happy that I made that move.
Yep.
No.
Why don't we hold on that
Okay.
one until he gets a chance to vote. I've got a sense he's going to be in favor of it, Don, so. But we start the process of reading the incantation for the executive session.
Governor, I'd move that under the authority of the North Dakota Century Code sections 6-09-35, 44-04-18.4, 44-04-19.1, 44-04-19.2, The industrial commission entered an executive session for the purpose of Bank of North Dakota confidential business and for the purpose of confidential business pertaining to the Pipeline Authority's capacity purchase program.
I'll second that. Call for the vote.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor,
Yes. Motion carries. Commission's meeting in executive session regarding Bank of North Dakota confidential business pursuant to NDCC 6-09-35 and 44-04-19.2 to consider those items listed on the agenda under the Bank of North Dakota confidential business. Only commission members, their staff, commission staff, and B&D staff will participate in that executive session. After the Bank of North Dakota confidential session, the commission is meeting in executive session regarding Pipeline Authority confidential business pursuant to North Dakota Central Code 44-04-18.4 to consider those items listed on the agenda. Only commission members, their staff, commission staff, Pipeline Authority staff, and potential contract parties will participate in that executive session. Any formal action taken by the commission will occur after it reconvenes in open session. I remind the commission members and those present in the executive session that the discussions must be limited to the announced purposes, which is anticipated to last plus or minus 45 minutes. Executive session will begin at 3:20.
commission updates on natural gas. The update that you have in front of you. You'll find some updates on just some of the production forecasts. Frac crews, this is a big one. I know Nathan Anderson is going to focus as well more heavily on the frac crews versus the drilling rig counts. We've had a rough 2024 thus far. I think I can point to frac crews as the major cause of that, and having lower completion numbers, keeping oil production on the downward slide rather than a stable or upward movement. But that has turned around the last couple of months.
Do we have ducks in here?
Not in this graphic, but the ducks are down to, as of this week, I think 12. We're down to essentially 0. Yeah. The one thing you'll also find in here that I won't spend a tremendous amount of time, but just the market dynamics on crude oil. I've been so focused on natural gas that I've kind of gotten away from providing you updates on what's happening with our crude oil infrastructure, the movements. Still about 2 trains per day heading out of North Dakota, the rest moving by pipelines.
Where do those 2 trains leave each day from the same location, or do they bounce around? How many active?
We got about half a dozen active.
So they move around to, so is it sort of uniformly? So then if it's 14 a week across 3, they're all doing kind of, 4 or 5 train loads a week?
There's 2 or 3 bigger ones that have some pipe connectivity and more market flexibility.
Can you get us the locations of the 6 that are still operating?
Yes.
The train ones?
Yep, and you'll actually find that in the annual report that was also submitted today. There's a rail map in there.
Okay.
As well. But yeah, it's been, here is the map, yes, slide 10. So you can see the remaining handful there, all on BNSF, no more CP active.
So they're very small on this one that is in this little printed thing. It's those towns.
Correct. Those rail facilities that you see.
There's 5 on the north, 1 on the south.
Correct.
Yes. East, yeah.
Yeah.
Not on the little paper, but
yeah.
Okay. Got it.
So with that, I will pause. We can dig into oil prices if you'd like. It's been, again, not a positive story the last 12 months due to some dynamics. Things are improving, but we'll likely settle in a new normal. I've been working with OMB on trying to figure out
what do you think the new normal is on the
between 6 and 7 is what I've been advising.
Dollars?
$6 and $7 below WTI.
And what's driving that? Is it a
competition with Canadian synthetic crude oil coming down through that same kind of PADD 2 marketplace? We've seen some uptick in pricing on Dakota Access for some of the pipeline transport. So the more expensive your transport is, it just translates back to higher discounts in the state. So
if they change their refining process?
The
Canadians.
No, just an upward tick in what's called synthetic crude oil. So they take the heavy oil, they kind of partially refine it. Yep.
Okay.
And so they've been increasing throughput on those.
So they've been changing their
upgraders.
refining
Yes.
process
Yep.
to do it.
Yep.
Okay.
And that it competes very well against a Bakken barrel in the Great Lakes. So with that, I will stop there. And then it gets into more natural gas, but as well, you'll
the
find
gas ratios continue to climb?
yes, new record in August, highest GOR we've had to date, 2.99 statewide.
And then how about our gas plant? What's the any gas plant expansion construction underway?
One public and more efforts going on behind the scenes to look at either traditional expansions, even some discussions on mobile gas processing units and other ways to expand the capacity of our existing fleets. Good. And certainly, Governor, I wrote down some of the questions you had in confidential, and I'll make sure and circle back with you and your team on those.
Well, thank you for the work you're doing, and I think on the as between now and the next meeting, appropriately, either public or private, we should talk about what recommendations we might have for the legislature relative to program refinement on committed capacity to make sure that we're doing everything we can economically to ensure that we're supporting strategic infrastructure.
Yes.
For the state, so that we've learned some things and you can maybe refine the And then if we need to, I'd be happy to have you sync up with John and our team to make sure that you're aware of all the people that we're talking to, either in the governor's office or Commerce, that are potential customers.
Yes. Yep. Perfect.
All right, thank you. I appreciate everything you do, Justin. Always great information.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the extra time here this afternoon.
Okay, Phil, slide on in here. You're up next.
Governor, just quickly, we need to actually technically come back out,
Okay, all right.
read our script, and take a vote.
All right, well, we did come back out again. Okay, we got that done before we went into open with Justin. Okay, the executive session, can someone remind me when it actually ended? It was before this piece with Justin about 7 or 8 minutes ago.
4:40.
4:40. It ended at 4:40. We reconvened and opened during the Bank of North Dakota executive session. The commission discussed those items listed on the agenda. And during the pipeline executive session, the commission discussed confidential business related to Pipeline Authority's capacity purchase program. No formal action was taken during either executive session. We do have one piece of business from public prior to when we went in, which was we had a motion and a second on the table to authorize BND President Don Morgan signature capacity for a series of a resolution designating a depository of the Bank of North Dakota for the following entities. Those are listed under item D. The motion includes those. We'll call for the vote on that motion.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor,
Yes.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. So back to Phil and a legal update. And also John Wright. John, thank you.
All right, gentlemen, a couple updates on some of our federal rule challenges since our meeting last month. First three were the big EPA air emission rules. We had some disappointing news from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court denied the stay applications in all three of them. So now it goes back down to the DC Circuit, where they're in the middle of briefing, and the carbon rule is scheduled for argument beginning of December.
What was the rationale behind their denying the stay?
For MATS and the methane rule, they didn't offer an explanation. For the carbon rule, there was a very short explanation by a couple concurring justices who said they didn't think the harm was irreparable or immediate enough because the rule has several years before compliance is required. Though, in their concurrence, at least two justices suggested that the plaintiffs it looked like their claims had merit. And then another justice dissented, so there's at least some justices on the Supreme Court that seem like they would have been, that they'll be willing to consider the claims when they're brought up on the merits.
Does it likely end up back in the Supreme Court?
I suspect it will, regardless of how the DC Circuit rules.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, the next one is EPA's WOTUS rule. This has been preliminarily enjoined. The suit is in the District of North Dakota. 24 states have joined us up here. It's been preliminarily enjoined for a long time, and it's awaiting for the court's summary judgment decision.
And what's your thoughts about that possibility?
Well, in our assessment, not much has changed between the preliminary injunction and the summary judgment. And that's the argument we made to the court.
So you've got some optimism?
Well, I would say I'm not skeptical of our chances.
Did the Chevron deference earlier case come into play at all or get mentioned in any of the Supreme Court action?
Yep, for the WOTUS rule, that was actually the subject of some supplemental briefing about how that decision impacts the ruling there.
Really? In a positive way for us.
That's how we argued. The federal government said it didn't impact it. So we'll see what the court says.
Okay.
The next two rules, the BLM venting and flaring and BLM conservation. BLM venting and flaring, both these challenges are also in North Dakota. Venting and flaring, we have the preliminary injunction in place. Summary judgment briefing is underway. We filed our brief earlier this month, waiting on the federal government to file their response. And for the conservation rule, the federal government just lodged the administrative record earlier this month, and the schedule has us doing our initial brief in early January. Then the NEPA Phase 2 rule, this is the rule where they are changing the overall standard for doing NEPA reviews. Briefing is complete. It's scheduled for argument here in the District of North Dakota, November 20th. And we'll be arguing on behalf of the 21 state coalition. The final item in this section is Northwest landowners. Haven't discussed that in a month or two, but they have finally, the plaintiffs filed their notices of appeal. So both Northwest landowners and the Farm Bureau have filed their appeals to the North Dakota Supreme Court.
But this is it's a non-legal thing, but I'm still confused about Farm Bureau's standing when you've got so many landowners that are voting yes on pore space.
Well, they only need to find one.
But if we got a 60 square mile and 90% of the land in that is farms and ranches and 90% of those vote yes for it, then I'm confused about who Farm Bureau is representing. It's
Yeah, well,
that's a non-legal. That's
Yeah,
not.
yeah, I mean,
I'm just making an editorial comment. I really.
It's one of those things. I mean, they really do just need to find one. And they've got standing, they can bring a case. David against Goliath or whatever. David against 90%.
And I'll jump down to the last bullet here. Sorry for skipping over you, John. Then I'll give it back to you. The latest DAPL litigation you might have saw in the news that a week or so back, Standing Rock brought another suit against the Corps seeking to enjoin DAPL. As you may recall, there was litigation about this a couple of years ago. The court in DC said that the analysis for the Corps granting the easement was insufficient, directed the Corps to redo the environmental impact assessment, but it declined to enjoin DAPL's operation. That the Corps' environmental impact assessment is still underway, but Standing Rock has brought another suit in the interim to force the closure of DAPL. So we are evaluating our options and if we want to intervene as a defendant in that case.
Any reason why we wouldn't want to?
Not that we've identified so far.
I wouldn't think so because it's in
our best interest.
Interest of every citizen in the state, including everybody from Standing Rock.
Yep.
Because it helps pay for the roads and the schools that as citizens, enrolled members of Standing Rock also enjoy.
Yes, sir. And if we do need to intervene, I anticipate we'll do that fairly shortly. If not this week, then next.
Okay. Sounds great. Okay. So any questions for Phil? Hearing none, back to you, John, on the BLM resource management plan.
So we have submitted the governor's consistency review, which is the last step in the local protest process with the BLM. The state filed a protest and the governor's consistency review. Next steps are we will wait for the BLM to respond in some capacity. If the BLM disagrees with us, next step is we can appeal that to the director of the BLM, where then we will do the same process. And then after that, we will evaluate our situations from there. But right now we have not heard anything from the BLM. There's no time frame on how long they have to respond. Could be 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months. So we are in a holding pattern as of right now.
Okay. Good update. Any other questions for John? Okay, hearing none, we're moving to the Office of the Industrial Commission. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, John. First thing, we got consideration of minutes for September 30th.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additions or corrections? Call for the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Commissioner Dillon?
Yes.
Yes, motion carries.
And the final item we have is a personnel matter. As you know, our Deputy Director, Reese Haas, submitted his resignation yesterday. We all received a copy of that letter. So the action item for us today would be to formally accept that resignation and then direct the executive director to move forward with the hiring process of a new deputy.
So I first would say I wish him well on his future endeavors and hope I believe he's got a lot of opportunities and have enjoyed his commitment here. So with that, I'll make a motion.
Yeah, I'll second.
Yeah, and I want to concur with Commissioner Goring. Reese has been a valuable member, first of the governor's policy staff, and also has done a great job on the energy side of the NDIC work that he's been involved in. And I'm confident that he's going to have a lot of opportunities in front of him. And I hope that he finds a thing that keeps him connected to North Dakota energy industry. And I know he's doing a great job of representing our state at IOGCC right now, because I've been with him when he's done that in the past. So hope he lands somewhere in North Dakota, and I'm guessing he'll have a chance to do that. But with that, we'll call for the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes, motion carries. And so tell us your process, Karen. You'll post here shortly on the, I know you've had a revised and upgraded job description for the Reese's expanded capacity that was put in place last April. Will you, you'll post that position?
Yes, so that job description is in good shape and ready to go. And working with HRMS, we should have the job posted by close of business on Friday.
Great. Any other business before the commission?
No other business.
Great. Well, thank you, Brenna, Aaron, and Karen, everybody else on the team. Thank you guys for the another meeting where we moved a lot of important business forward again.